Hello everyone, and we come to the book of Mr. Quiet in a series of Mr. Mint. Let's see. Mr. Quiet, like the quiet life. He lived quietly in a small little cottage in the middle of a wood. The problem was that small little cottage was in the middle of a wood in the middle of a country called Loud Land. Everything and everybody in Loud Land was noisy. Oh, the noise! Dogs didn't go woof like dogs, you know. They went take a deep breath. Woof! People didn't shut their doors like you or I would shut our doors. They slammed them. Bang! People didn't talk to each other. They shouted at each other. Hello! They would shout as they met in the street. And you have heard about something being as quiet as a mouse, haven't you? Not in Loudland. They had noisiest mice in the world. Squeak! Squeak! They would roar at each other. Mr. Noisy would have liked living in Loudland. He would have loved it. But Mr. Quiet didn't. Noise frightened him. So he stayed in his cottage in the middle of his wood as much as he could. But of course, he couldn't stay there all the time. Every week, for instance, he had to go shopping. He used to creep into the grocer shop. Good morning, bellowed the grocer. What can I do for you? Please, whispered Mr. Quiet. Could I have some cornflakes, please? What? Cornflakes, please, he whispered. Speak up! Mr. Quiet tried his loudest whisper. Cornflakes! Can't hear you, shouted the grocer. Next, please. And poor Mr. Quiet had to creep away without any cornflakes. It wasn't fair, was it? He crept into the butcher's. Please, he whispered. I would like some meat. The butcher didn't even hear him. He was humming to himself, loudly and fiercely. Mr. Quiet tried again. Please, he whispered. I would like some meat. The butcher started to whistle. It sounded more like a burglar alarm than a whistle. Mr. Quiet fled, empty-handed. It often happened, which probably explains why he was so little. Poor Mr. Quiet. He sat at home that night with a feeling of despair. Whatever am I to do? He thought. It's no use, he thought. I'll just have to try again. And so the following day he went shopping again, but the same thing happened. Can't hear you, thundered the grocer. Next, please. Can't hear you, bellowed the green grocer. Next, please. Can't hear you, roared the milkman. Next, please. Can't hear you, boom, the butcher. Next, please. Oh, dear. Poor Mr. Quiet went home and went to bed hungry. The morning after he was wakened by a noise which sounded like bombs dropping. It was the Loudland postman knocking at the Quiet's door. Bang, 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 bang! Mr. Quiet went and opened the door. Morning, shouted the postman. Letter for you. Mr. Quiet took the letter into his kitchen. He sat down to open it. He waited until the noise of the postman's footsteps died away. Clump, 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 clump. Mr. Quiet opened the letter in great excitement. He never had a letter before. It was from Mr. Happy in Happyland, an invitation to stay. Mr. Quiet was overjoyed. He rushed upstairs and packed his bag and set off that very morning. It was late when he arrived on Mr. Happy's doorstep. He knocked on Mr. Happy's door. Tap, tap, tap. Mr. Happy opened the door. Hello, he smiled. I thought I heard something. You must be Mr. Quiet. Well, don't you stand there. Come in and have some supper. It was the first proper meal Mr. Quiet had had for months, and while he was eating it, he told Mr. Happy all about the problems he'd been having in Loudland. Mr. Happy was most sympathetic. Over breakfast the following morning, Mr. Happy told Mr. Quiet that he'd been thinking about his problem. I think, he said, that under the circumstance you'd better stay here in Happyland. Mr. Quiet's face lit up. And continued Mr. Happy, we'll find you a house. And he went on a job. Mr. Quiet's face dropped. I'm not very good at jobs, he confessed, because I'm too quiet. Smile, Mr. Happy. I have the very job for a quiet chap like you. And so, the very next day, Mr. Quiet started work, and he loves it. Do you know where he works? In the Happy Landing Library. As you know, everybody who goes into the library has to be very quiet, and only whispering is allowed. What a clever idea of Mr. Happy's, wasn't it? And these days, Mr. Quiet is as happy as can be. Why, only the other day, do you know what he did on his way home from work? He was so happy he laughed out loud. Can you imagine? Tee-hee-hee. Next, please. Oh, wow. And we finished the Mr. Quietest book in the series of Mr. Men. Bye-bye.